Recording in progress.
Of course.
Thank you, Sheldon.
And of course it stopped me. So let's go back. There we go. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about kind of breaking down the systems of support, but we're really going to be talking about self-direction and what that looks like and kind of how it ties into the work that we're doing here at EROS. But not many of you in New Jersey know me very well. I've been working for EROS for just under a year now, but all of my presentations, I try to make sure that we have some poetry involved in it as well. So I think it gets us to think about things in a bit of a different way. So I'm going to start with this poem called The Unknown Citizen. He was found by the Bureau of Statistics to be one whom there was no official complaint, and all the reports of his conduct agree that in the modern sense of an old-fashioned word, he was a saint. For in everything he did, he served the greater community, except for the war till the day he retired. He worked in a factory and never got fired, but satisfied his employer, Fudge Motors Incorporated. Yet he wasn't a scab or odd in his views, for his union reports that he paid his dues. Our report on his union shows it was sound, and our social psychology workers found that he was popular with his mates and liked to drink. The press are convinced that he bought a paper every day and that his reactions to advertisements were normal in every way. Policies taken out in his name prove that he was fully insured, and his health card shows he was once in the hospital but left it cured. Both producers, research, and high-grade living declare he was fully sensible to the advantages of the installment plan and that everything necessary to the modern man. A phonograph, a radio, a car, a Frigidaire. Our researchers into public opinion are content that he held the proper opinions for the time of year. When there was peace, he was for peace. When there was war, he went. He was married and added 5 children to the population, which our eugenist says was the right number for a parent of his generation. And our teachers report that he never interfered with their education. Was he free? Was he happy? The question is absurd. Had anything been wrong, we certainly would have heard. So I'm Sheldon Schwitek. I am the Director of People and Culture here at EROS Group, with a long history in person-centered planning and self-direction, and have been here just over 9 months, I believe, although I was doing some consulting with EROS prior to that.
And thank you for that poem, Sheldon. That was beautiful. My name is Kristen Mathews. I'm the Director of Supports Brokerage with EROS Group, and I've been with EROS Group for the past just about 3 years, and I've been in and out of the field for about 15.
So one of the things we wanted to do to start this presentation was that our founder, Jen Brown, kind of built this organization on this idea of self-direction and helping people to be self-directed, and how Supports Brokerage could help to leverage some of that. So we're actually going to talk a little bit about what this global standard for self-directed support that's been created by a couple of different organizations that are working in partnership, and then kind of dive into what it is that we are thinking about as far as how that works with what we do in our work. And so the global standards for self-direction is something that was released by Citizen Network and the Self-Directed. I can't see. What does it say there, Kristen? Self-directed what network? I have my chat is in the way of that one part of my slide.
The Citizens Network, the Self-Directed Support Network.
The Self-Directed Support Network. I can't remember the word support. Sorry, and now, of course, I have dogs going on in the background. My apologies. So these global standards are expectations for everyone to follow anywhere in the world. And I'm going to try and get this into the chat so that you guys can actually download it. The global standards for the Self-Directed Support Network, they actually have this document as well as an easy read document. You'll be able to find any of this at that website, selfdirectedsupport.org or citizennetwork.org. And we're going to sort of use the easy read slides and dive a little bit into each of the 17 different standards that they believe have to be involved in somebody who's self-directing. Kristen, do you want to read that for me? I'm going to try and get this out in the chat.
Sure.
Oh, of course.
Don't worry. So we all have the right to live a life of freedom and full community inclusion. These fundamental rights were articulated in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. The 2006 Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities underscored that human rights apply to all people, regardless of disability or chronic illness. To ensure human rights for all, we must organize systems that maximize autonomy of the person to make choices and exercise control over their supports. And then it goes into some examples of the essential.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh. So this is the beginning of how they tie together. Go ahead, Kristen.
No, it's okay. So what that means with Eros Group, we always want to have the person at the center of the conversation. And also we want to ensure that just because someone experiences a developmental or neurological disability does not mean that they're not entitled to these rights.
So sorry, go ahead, Kristen.
Okay, self-directed support means that I control the following. So when we work with people to help them find self-directed employees, that staff, those one-on-one companions, we want to make sure that they have control over who supports them. So they're able to choose what person is working with them, how they wish to be supported, what they would like to do on a day-to-day basis, and when they are doing those tasks.
All right, give me 1 second. So I'm going to have to come off and back on for 1 sec, just so I can see my cursor and get that document sent out to everybody. There we go. Okay. And actually, 1 more second. I'm going to close the chat so I can see what I am doing. There we go. So the global standards, and I just sent out that document. You know, in easy read language, really, they're about money. The first two are about money and about decisions. So the first one is that people need a dedicated budget, individualized and controlled by the person with any support they choose, used flexibly and creatively to promote the person's best life. And then that second point is that they should have access to legally recognized supported decision-making that minimizes substitute decision-making and the loss of legal agency.
For education, outreach and education on self-directed supports beginning in early childhood. For information, clear and simple information on self-directed supports widely available in the mainstream, tailored for cultural responsiveness and relevance and fully accessible.
For administration, it really means that practical administration processes that minimize participant burden, which means that the person themselves doesn't necessarily have to do all of the work. For planning, we believe that person-centered planning, a process of identifying what's important to a person with strategies to support what's important that demonstrate a commitment to people's capacity and value. Number 7 on organizing, no cost assistance with technical aspects of self-directed supports, including help meeting program requirements and assistance with locating, hiring, and managing staff.
Information and resources for families, friends, and other allies to support the person. Respectful employment practices that recognize the rights of staff to fair wage and to be free from exploitation. Peer support, mutual aid, well-being, and navigating the system. Participation promotes access and drives innovation.
Transparent, sufficient, fair resource allocation based on a person's priorities and their needs. portability of self-directed funding and eligibility across jurisdictions within a country, and comprehensive and genuinely independent advocacy to protect human rights, privacy of personal information, freedom to make big and small life decisions, and safeguarding from harm.
Practices that ensure all people have the option to control as much or as little of their supports as they choose, based on presumption of personal capacity. Quality, practices, and outcomes measurement that the support continuous learning and improvement and hold systems accountable to the principles of self-directed support. An orientation toward equality in access, respect for people's cultural identities, and positive outcomes, with particular attention to groups that are historically marginalized and underserved. People who experience developmental disabilities and those with chronic illnesses are fundamentally trusted and have principal roles in the oversight, governance, and administration of support systems.
So we want to just hold to these ideas of what self-directed is. And I don't think that there's anyone who's on this particular workshop or anywhere in this country who doesn't believe in those basic tenets. I think it's interesting to note that there's an international organization that's come together and looked at self-directed services for everybody around the world, and that these are the basic tenets. And I think hanging on to that and recognizing that that's the key to good self-directed supports, and then for each of us to figure out where the gaps are in those 17 points. Where are the places that we could improve what we do and how we support people? So another little poem just to segue into before we start talking about how we're doing all that work at EROS is a poem by Rosemary Watola Tromer called "It Might Just Happen." Everywhere I go, I find them, people who bring love to the world. Reading the headlines, I sometimes think that love is dead and humans are brutes and we all may as well all give up. But every time I leave home, I meet pedestrians who wave and a woman who gives understanding nods and men who offer to pay when the person in front of them is short a few bucks. People hold doors for each other with a smile, and I've seen folks pick up trash off the sidewalk and go out of their way not to step on a beetle or a worm. My friend Wayne says, we have to love the world to want to save it. And sometimes I think it might just happen. Though every day unspeakable cruelty happens on the same streets. Oh, this world. Even as I feel my guard go up, I see strangers chatting on the corner as they wait for the bus. Notice how their laughter threads through the noise of the day like a song, like a kite. So we're just going to spend a little bit of time for the remainder of the time that we have together to think about how, or talk about how we have been trying to build into the supports brokerage that we provide each of these sort of standards around self-direction and what that might look like, provide some examples for you, and talk about where we are in the work we're doing as we do it. And we're going to actually have our fearless leader, our dear friend and boss, Jen Brown, start us off.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Brown, and I'm the founder of EROS Group. I started EROS Group in 2017 and first offered person-centered.
I think I might have not shared that properly, so hang on one second. Yeah, I did not share my sound. Here we go. Let's try that again. Play.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Brown, and I'm the founder of EROS Group. I started EROS Group in 2017 and first offered person-centered planning and consulting services. In February of 2020, EROS started offering services and supports to people with developmental disabilities in New Jersey. We help people find housing, things to do in their local communities, and assist in self-directing their supports in whatever way they need. We do this by planning with the person and their supporters. Eros means to join or bind together that which has been broken, divided, or separated. I am a parent of 3 exceptional human beings. My oldest lives with the experience of a disability. He's 26 years old and often requires a great deal of support. Kyle's journey at times has been challenging. As a family, we have felt isolated and marginalized. He's not always experienced the very best of the service system. My idea for this company was simple. I wanted to create a space where people could show up and share their best selves. This is not just for the people that we support, but also for the people that work here. I wanted a company where people looked out for each other, where they were not afraid to take risks and use their intuition.
So one of the underlying, give me 1 second here, I'm sorry, but my screen is not acting the way that I really want it to be right now. So trying to see all of you beautiful people, and it's not really letting me do that right now. So let me get back to Zoom. Huh, I lost all your pictures, but hopefully you're all still there. So one of the underlying principles that we've been utilizing in our underlying sets of principles we've been using at Eros Group is something called a culture of gentleness. And there are 2 sort of basic principles that we can bring to the work and wanted to sort of highlight as ways of this underlying philosophy supporting what self-direction looks like. So culture of gentleness and gentle teaching are pieces that have been woven in from the very beginning of the work that we do here at Eros. So one of them is this thing we call the central purpose, or the statement that we call the central purpose. And the central purpose of our presence in the lives of each other is to create, nurture, and sustain the experience of connectedness, companionship, and community. And for us, this idea of the central purpose is recognizing that there is a reciprocity to all the relationships that we have with each other in the work that we do, that not only do we have an opportunity to help support somebody to have a better life, but just having them in our lives actually makes our lives better as well. And that we want to create experiences that build connection not only with ourselves and the people that are being supported, but also to the community at large, and recognizing that it's going to take some time and effort for each of us to nurture that connection and those community connections for people and with people in community. And then to also recognize that we want to sustain those over time, and recognizing that there is a balance between nurturing new relationships, sustaining old ones, reinvigorating or creating new ones along the way, and recognizing that the experience for everyone is one that is good and that leads towards a good life. Thinking about these ideas of connectedness, companionship, and community is really the ways in which we build community for the people we support. We want them to be connected to us and supported by us. And then once they get connected and we build relationship, we have a sense of companionship and relationship with them in order for us to fully understand what their dreams might be and how they might want to move through the world. And once we have that, then we can help to become the bridge to community, to finding ways to support people so that they get connected to even more people, and people, particularly people who are outside of the service system, just like the rest of us.
So what is important? A good example that comes to mind, I think about a woman that we've been helping for the past several years. She had some complex needs, and there was a time where she had injured her foot, and she ended up having to go into an outpatient or an inpatient rehab to heal herself. And she had 2 small dogs at home. And there was a situation because, you know, she's in rehab and the dogs are at home, and she was going to be there for a couple of weeks. So Jennifer Brown and myself got in the car, got a little dog cage, went to her house, picked up the dogs, and we watched these dogs for the next couple of weeks. Jen watched these dogs for the next couple of weeks. And we had these 2 great new companions in the office for a few weeks, and we really helped build that relationship with her, making her feel safe.
And I think if you haven't already noticed, with dogs are pretty important to us at Eros Group as well. So the fact that Jen and Kristen went to rescue them and that they spent their time in the office is not a surprising one. So recognizing that we actually need these relationships, right? We need relationships that might mean that we kind of might do something more than would be expected of us in the way that we do the work, and recognizing that purpose and meaning are important for people. So, you know, caring of dogs and the loving of dogs is something that a lot of people share, both people with disabilities who experience intellectual disabilities and otherwise. And so we get meaning, we get relationship, we get purpose in just even having to take care of something, right? But the reality is, what we really know is that it is a place where we need to feel safe and loved and supported. And we're going to talk a little bit more about safe and loved in a little bit. So not to worry about that. But there is also science around this, and I have seen another number of presentations, and maybe we'll think about doing one for next year's conference around loneliness. My friend David Petoniak often says that loneliness is the only disability, and that if people are truly connected to people in their community, that all of a sudden, all of the whatever we would consider special needs start to fade away. They're not seen as the major part of who a person is. So some of the things to think about, right, is that we can't measure community in a traditional sense, and we can't measure whether people are ready for community. We know that they're always ready for community, right? Testing and all of the evaluations that we do on people just doesn't really start to help understand people. We learn about a person through their strengths and through person-centered planning and relationships. So recognizing, as we said earlier, person-centered planning is a critical part of making sure that people are involved in their community and able to have some goals and move towards those that lead to a good life for them. And person-centered planning often looks not only at the system, but looks outside of the system. So we'd like to share this brief little video from Beth Mount, one of the originators of person-centered planning processes in the country and actually in the world, and how she talks about how person-centered planning is not always system-centered, and that we might need to think about it a little bit differently.
From the origin of person-centered planning, we were trying to understand and see what it looks like when we just fit people into systems and defined their needs and saw them through the eyes of what a system needs for a person to be in order to generate the funding that's required and to basically service them. And system-centered work tends to be based on a medical model which assumes something's wrong with people, and it's the system's job to fix them. And so the system is invested in defining them in terms of their deficiencies and creating a treatment plan, and then working to help people get it right before they get to be members and be whole people in the real world. So person-centered planning offers a major contrast to that, which is to say that people don't belong to systems. They belong to themselves, they belong to their families and their communities. And if we see them in a different light by the capacities that they bring, and we understand that their communities are the place where they can contribute and be citizens, then our thinking shifts dramatically from how to fit people into systems and service them there to how do we support people to live good lives in community, and then how do we take what we need from systems and services so that services are not bad, they just tend to be wired for their own purposes, for their own self-interest. So a good person-centered planning process calls into question the way we use services and invites us to really change the way most of our services are configured to be more responsive to the people and the way that they want to live in the communities that they're in.
Contact us for more information, for a free demonstration or trial, or to sign up.
So that little video sort of touches on, I think, what we here at Eros think is a really important part of Supports Brokerage is that some of, and I think many of the things that we offer to individuals who are self-directing is to be that bridge between the system and the community at large, and making sure that people have a sense of belonging. So the overarching principles that we try to hold as we are thinking about the work that we do is that we're focused on allyship, as in we're actually allies of the person and making sure that their dreams, needs, wants, and desires are all being put forward, that their well-being is taken care of, that they're honored as citizens in the communities that they live in, that they have a sense of belonging in those communities, and that we work diligently to help build community around them.
So Richard is this handsome young man in the middle here in the Giants shirt. And I have my mother and my uncle, and my brother experiences a developmental disability. He has had some complex needs over the years, but he currently lives in his own home out in the community. He has a roommate that also experiences a developmental disability, and he has a live-in caregiver that's there every overnight, and they have about 10 staff members between the two of them. And my brother Richard is able to self-direct his life. He goes to a pre-vocational program twice a week. He enjoys working with his hands, and he does that twice a week. For him, it was important that there was a mix of services that a typical person could utilize, as well as disability-specific services for him. He has staff that he goes on walks and hikes with on Saturday afternoons. Sundays, he enjoys watching football. He goes to the grocery store every week. Every Thursday, he goes to the grocery store with the staff and his roommate. He gets to pick out the simple things. What kind of soup does he want? What kind of hand soap does he like to use? Things like that. We always like to give him the option for what he wants to do on his day-to-day. And my family is definitely very blessed to have this option for my brother.
I think the other thing I would add that I know a little bit about Richard is that all of those pieces are really important to him, that he has a lot of structure in his life, but knowing that he's going to be out and going to work, knowing that he's going to be doing all of these things are the key to his happiness, that he really does look forward to each of them. And deviations are not always as well received as they might be. Like all of us, we get disappointed when things have to change. So him being able to even vocalize that and to make sure that we stay on task and on time is a really important piece for him too.
And he loves to remind us when we're not on time, Sheldon.
Exactly. Exactly. Those are I think I might need more of those people in my life. The next little video that we have is actually of somebody that we helped to support through self-direction, and who got connected to her community to the point that she actually made what eventually was the local ABC News, but actually got some nationwide play. And so we'll let this little video speak for itself.
She really just wants to be treated like everybody else. She's just somebody who may take a little bit longer to learn something.
Here at the Belmar Fishing Club in Belmar, New Jersey, Chef Mike Harrison and his apprentice Alina DeMauro, a 22-year-old living with autism and Down syndrome, have cooked up the recipe for the perfect dream team, delighting clients with their friendship and mouth-watering dishes.
What's your favorite thing to cook when you come here?
I would say I can cook perfect for dinner. I did pizza, ground beef, and cheese on side, and that's it.
When Elena was small, we had a vision for her, that she would be able to live independently with supports and self-direct her own life. Since that time, there's been a lot of doors closed in our face. So that's why we're so incredibly grateful for someone like Chef Mike and the Belmar Fishing Club, because they opened their kitchen door to her and they give her an opportunity to come here with her gifts and develop relationships and, quite frankly, change people. Elena lives her life fully. She has her own apartment, she has support people, she calls them co-workers, you know, and they work alongside of her. I love that she picked that name. You know, she's generally involved, and the community piece is huge for self-direction.
Always smiling,
Yeah,
mostly happy all the time.
a little bit.
Little bit, yeah. It's hard to describe, but when you work with somebody who is just as loving and caring and funny as she is, you know, and has no expectations and, you know, just wants to do good. You spend an hour or two every week with somebody like that, it can't help but affect you. I really didn't know what to expect, but I'm really glad that I took the chance to work with somebody that is not different from everybody. It's just she has her own way of learning and set of skills. So I'm really glad that I took that chance.
She's happy, and that's all anybody wants for their kid. Anybody, right? You want them to be happy, productive, and she is. So, you know, we're so grateful for Chef Mike and the Belmar Fishing Club for allowing this.
Chef Mike, it's great.
I think the thing I love about that story is so much about how her family was really committed to her being in the community. And I don't want to discount the amount of time and effort and energy that the family put into helping her to get connected to the community that she lives in and wants to work in, and that they even feeling empowered enough to not necessarily think about her support people as supporters, but as co-workers, right? That they're working together. The next story we'd like to share is really one of around housing. And my good friend Colleen, you see this picture of myself and her. We're actually at a botanic garden in Phoenix, Arizona. We went to a conference last year and took some time a little bit after the day after the conference to do some sightseeing. But Colleen is also somebody who came to us for some brokerage services, particularly around housing. And I think it is an interesting story from the perspective of how we actually helped to make sure that she got what she truly needed and deserved, in spite of the fact that she may have settled for something less. So Colleen had been looking for housing for a while. She'd put her name on a number of waiting lists, and one of the new buildings that was going up in her city had called her up and actually offered her a one-bedroom apartment. Now, Colleen's somebody who currently doesn't require a significant amount of support, but knows that over time she's going to need some live-in support. And so she had a voucher for a two-bedroom apartment, and they were offering her a one-bedroom apartment. And here's the interesting thing that I think brokerage and really relationship offers, right? I wasn't working for Eros at the time that I met Colleen. I'd been doing some consulting, but I actually met her on the whim of our boss, Jen, who said that I think the two of you would just hit it off. And we ended up having coffee in the park one day and really struck up a really good friendship. But they offered her this one-bedroom apartment that essentially was a studio apartment with a little 10-foot by 10-foot room with a glass wall that she could consider a bedroom. And that all would have been fine and adequate for her if there had been another bedroom. But the bigger roadblock for me when she was presenting this idea of taking this apartment was that the bathroom was barely accessible to her. And in fact, I would say it was really inaccessible to her. Had a very tiny, tiny hallway that had the washer and dryer on one side, and I think there was a coat closet on the other. And she said, well, if I really manage it, I could probably get my wheelchair in the right way. And if I had grab bar set here and they put a shower in, I could make it work. And really, should I pass up this opportunity? She was quite desperate to leave the housing situation that she was in because it was costing her far too much than she could afford and was soon going to run out. And funds, and she felt like she could utilize those funds elsewhere. So she was almost convincing herself or talking herself into taking that apartment. And I looked at her at one point and I said, what are you talking about? Like, you can't actually access the bathroom adequately. And you're talking about now, what happens if as you age, you're not able to support yourself this well? It's going to be impossible, and you're going to be back in the same situation. I said, it's totally up to you. Obviously, it's your decision. But as your friend and a supporter of yours, I would say that you'd be crazy. And I said, I really want you to consider that there's going to be something else happening. And I said, if you pass on this, I'm going to give you my promise that within less than a year, I said, and then I really corrected myself. And I said, I think even within less than 6 months, my gut is telling me that you're going to have the apartment that you need. And it wasn't more than about 3 months later that she got a call from that same building, and they offered her a 2-bedroom apartment on the penthouse, the top floor of the building, with access to a roof deck that was shared by the building, but that had a view of the New York City skyline. So she went from living in a little garden apartment in that same city to living in a penthouse, is what I like to jokingly call it as. And I think, again, this idea of brokerage is really about relationship and making sure people are getting connected to the system and the places and the things that they need, but also that they get the support that they need to make decisions that are in their best interests. And sometimes that means being the person to say, I don't think this is a good idea for you. You get to decide, but I'm going to give you my honest opinion about what it looks like for you to direct those services and have that happen. We also support another young woman, Marianne, and we're actually going to let our friend Jen talk about that, because she was pretty integral. Marianne was one of the first people that we were supporting through brokerage, and Jen played a pretty integral role into getting Marianne situated. So
we assisted a person in moving from a group home to her own apartment. There was constant conflict with the group management in the group home and this young woman. The group home didn't want to let her go. Every meeting we had with them reinforced all the reasons why she should not be allowed to live in her own apartment. All the embarrassing and private things that she did in her early 20s and 30s. We didn't focus on those, instead focused on her words, her wishes. She's been in her own apartment now for over 2 years. None of those really awful things that the group home predicted happened. We have helped her reclaim her life, take some responsibility in her health care, the food that she eats, paying her bills, and maintaining her relationships. She works a job and is developing her own business. She advocated for her brother, who was also in a group home, kind of far away from her, to move across the hall from her in the apartment building. They are together again as a family, and it is a success in every aspect.
And I think in addition to that relationship has grown over time. And in fact, Marianne was another one of those people who actually came to the TASH conference with us last year, and who this year, actually, along with a couple of other people, and actually Richard, in fact, are going to be presenting at the TASH conference in Baltimore in December about self-direction and what it looks like from their perspective and how they get the supports that they need. So we're now trying to think about what's really next for us, right? How do we actually, and I think these are questions for everybody here, and I would love the opportunity for all of you to sort of chime in, whether it be through the chat or if we can manage it, I'll probably slow down my screen and hopefully get a chance to be able to see all of you. But, you know, what is next in the work that we do? So hang on, I'm going to actually pop out of that this way and come at it this way. Close this view. Navigator I like, but let's hide those notes. So the questions really being, think about how people are in your own community. What does well-being look like in your community? Where are the places that hospitality is common? And how can the system support the community and well-being? And so I want to stop sharing so I can get a chance to see if I can see people. I think if you want to raise your hand, we would actually be happy to have you come on screen and ask some questions. I'm going to pop them back up again, but yeah, if that would work for people, that would be great.
So we do have a question here. How do you start with support brokerage? Do you request it from your support coordinator? So if someone would be interested in supports brokerage, the next step would be to schedule an intake. It's typically done via Zoom with myself. It takes about 30 to 60 minutes, and it would be the person being supported, any of their supporters, family members, staff, anyone that they want there, as well as the support coordinator. That way we ensure that we're all on the same page with communication. We all know what the services are, what we can provide and what we can't.
Anybody have any thoughts around some of these questions? Where do you all show up in your communities? What does well-being look like for you in your community? Now's your chance to pull yourself off of mute.
Sheldon's right, everyone. We have a great opportunity here with him and Kristen and their undivided attention. So please do not hesitate to put your question into chat, or if you raise your hand, I'm happy to bring you off mute if you'd like to ask it verbally as well. Now is your time.
What did people, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I think we have Grace here asking a question.
Yeah, so, okay, I can't, am I on? Okay, because I can't see that. Yeah, so I'm the one that asked the question before. So supports brokerage, is it like something you choose a support brokerage agency, or does it depend where you live, which one you use? Like, how does that work?
Well, I can tell you with Eros Group that we provide supports brokerage throughout the state of New Jersey.
Okay.
And it would need to be added to the plan, to the budget. So that would be the support coordinator's role.
Okay, so you would reach out to your support coordinator, let them know you want to use supports brokerage.
Yep.
And then you choose the support coordination agency, or they tell you which ones are available for your area. Like you're saying you do all of New Jersey.
For supports brokerage, yes.
For supports brokerage, okay.
Yep. Being that it is a self-directed service, you have the option to choose which agency you'd like to work with.
Okay, perfect.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for the question, Grace. It's a great question. I think that as we look at, I mean, I have to be honest, I'm pretty excited about working at Eros. I was doing some consulting around a culture of gentleness for a couple of years as they were really growing. And the excitement that I have around supports brokerage is that I feel like it really offers an opportunity to bridge that piece that we were talking about earlier, right? Like systems and supports coordination is really the place that we get access to the system and figure out what we might need and what we can access from the system. But that supports brokerage takes it to the next level, right? Starts to help look at housing. Not so much at employment, although, you know, we want people to be involved in community. So employment and contribution are really important for people, but where they live, them directing and hiring their own staff, even so we do for some people who are self-directing, just provide staffing for them, but even how we approach staffing is critical for us, as in the person gets to decide whether it's the right match for them. It isn't just whoever shows up that day or whoever we actually have on the schedule, but I'm supporting a young woman right now who's made it really clear that she has 2 staff people that we tried to introduce that she was like, I don't want them anymore. Like, it's not working for me. And we honor that. We're like, okay, like give me time to find somebody else, but as soon as we can, or if we can do it right away, or we can substitute someone else in, we're going to do that too. We're going to make sure that you're the person's in charge. You're the person who gets to say what works and what doesn't for me. And I feel like that's so underutilized in the work that we do, like the connections between people and the building of relationship. If we expect people to get connected to community through the people supporting them, they better have a good relationship with the people who are supporting them, right? They better be connected to them in ways that are going to allow them to move their life forward.
Sheldon, I just want to clarify really quick, in
Yep.
regards, you mentioned employment, that we can help people through Supports Brokerage find opportunities in the community as well as volunteer opportunities, but we are not able to help people find paid positions. So those paid jobs, that would be something through job coaching, DVRS, that would not be under Supports Brokerage, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to say. There are other ways to look at employment other than just having a job and at getting a job in the community.
Great question and very helpful answer. Thank you. We do have a couple more questions that are starting to roll in, which is wonderful to see. This comes from Sarah. Do you help develop natural supports for the individual? And if you do, how so? And how do you do that?
One at a time. One at a time. Kristen, I'll let you go and then I'll chime in if you've got.
Okay,
or
sure.
unless you want me to, whatever, if you have an answer. So
Sheldon, I feel like you are the guru of developing circles of support. So I will definitely let you take that away.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things that ring true to me around natural supports, right? I think that the system has almost commodified it, and in some ways I think that we need to be really intentional about creating natural support. So as brokers, that is our intention underneath all of the work that we do, particularly if we're providing staffing, is that staff understand that it is their role to help build relationship not only with the person, but that person to build relationship with those around them. Kristen referenced circles of support. I think those circles of support, which we're actually starting to shift the language around and calling them personal support networks, are networks of people that the person's connected to, and how do we honor those relationships in ways that are going to build that. And maybe we need to be more intentional in the beginning about what they look like. So traditional circles of support were people gathering on a regular basis to help a person, often with that premise of supported decision-making being underneath it, right? That we all have natural supports in our lives. I think about my intentional circle, and I do have an intentional circle of people around me. And I don't have an intellectual or a developmental disability, but I do regularly reach out to people and have conversations with them, and occasionally actually bring them all together to ask some big questions when things are going on in my life. So natural supports look like who's already in my life or in the person's life, who are those people connected to, and how do I think about bringing more people into that circle or those natural supports? What does that look like? Because again, for all of us, we often get connected to people through people we already know. We don't usually run into strangers I think my relationship and my friendship with Colleen is a good example, right? We don't really provide very many brokerage services for her at this point. We were specifically focused on housing. That may change over time, but the relationship that we have was one that just felt right when I met her. She was like a missing piece of my life in being able to think about disability and her perspective, because I didn't have anybody who had a clear voice about what they thought should be in their life. So natural supports, it is a one person at a time thing because it really depends on the person. But if you come at it from the perspective of the person gets to decide and the person's in charge of thinking about that, then those services, then looking outside of services to find people that they can connect to becomes critical. And it might just mean going and having coffee at the same place every day, of the same day of the week at the same time, right? And running into some people and getting to know them over time. I think about, even just for me personally, I was at an Asian grocery store in my hometown and ran into a woman who was buying two things. She'd walked in buying only two things, and she's like, I am making some Thai pumpkin soup. And we ended up having a whole conversation about cooking Thai food and how grateful we were for the grocery store. And I bet you if I continue to show up there that we'll run into each other again. So finding the opportunities to build natural supports is really about making sure people are in their community in ways that are meaningful to them so that connection can happen. Hopefully that helps to answer that question.
Thank you, Sheldon. Another question. This one comes from Nancy, and we already have some comments coming in regarding your commodification, so we'll come back to that. To Nancy's question, she says, how does your service, pardon me, my question is, how is your service cost and what is the rate? How does it get broken down?
Sure. So Supports Brokerage is $10 a unit. One unit is 15 minutes. And the way that Supports Brokerage works is for each hour that we work, we are paid for that hour, or each unit that we work, we're paid for that unit. The brokers fill out something called billing sheets to keep track of their time. That's submitted on a weekly basis and billed directly to Medicaid through DDD. This work is either directly with the person being supported, their family, or by their request. For example, a large part of what we do is staffing, and we post on various different websites and we screen resumes. The legwork of screening the resumes might be something that the broker does without the presence of the person, but it's by their direction. So if they have specific credentials that they're looking for, a location that the broker is screening for, they can screen for those things. It's all with the person in mind, the person being supported.
Excellent. Thank you, Kristen. Very detailed, good information. Cynthia had a comment here regarding commodification, Sheldon. I think it's excellent to listen to. She says, however, commodification is one thing. However, the system is broken with no linkage. And that is what we need here for self-directed systems and for budget freedom until the coordinating process is up and running. What are your thoughts?
I almost want more clarification from Cynthia and what she's thinking about. I think that
Cynthia, if you're on, feel free to come off mute. Go ahead.
Cynthia, I think certainly go ahead.
I can give more clarification, and I don't want to spend the time here on my personal matter, but self-directed system is really great when you think about it in the overall, but because everything is not connected, so PPL is not connected to Easter seals, is not connected to the insurance group, none of it is connected. And I really do want to speak to my senators, state and US, to understand how we can make this happen, because it's good in terms of theory, but the system is broken.
Well, so Cynthia, I really appreciate those comments, and I certainly don't disagree that we definitely need significant change. I feel like self-direction is the wave of the future. It's not only, by our own example of looking at Citizen Network and the work that they're doing, is that there is a global movement towards self-direction. And I think it is pushing back at what we've traditionally experienced from the system, in the sense that people are in control. But we're talking about a service system that's really been operating in the same way for a long time. And systems are clunky, and they often are disconnected. I think brokerage allows us an opportunity to help support people through some of those pitfalls and to get some of those services connected. But I also agree that we are in a place where we need more advocacy. I would really encourage you to go to Citizen Network and see some of the work that they're doing, because I think that even the allyship that they offer across the world is one that I think a lot of people, and you obviously are a strong advocate for the work, to be able to find allies and other people who are trying to find ways to impact the system. But you're right, I think it is reaching out to those leaders and the powers that be to figure out how do we make this significant change. And I think the other thing for me in here at EROS is that we are trying to make change within and outside of the system by standing with the person, allied with the person, to try and figure out how to do better for them and with them.
Thank you. I do agree that we need to make some changes, perhaps not as quickly as are needed given the pandemic. So for example, I did not have a nephroscopy nurse during the pandemic. Crazy.
Right. Well, Cynthia, we're gonna make sure that you have our email addresses at the end of this. We've only got a couple of minutes, and I really actually would like to leave with a poem. So if you feel free to reach out, I would love to continue to have a conversation with you about that level of advocacy and the kinds of supports that you're looking at and looking for. So, but before we leave, I'd actually just like to leave us with a poem or a bit of prose really by a woman by the name of Margaret Wheatley, who's been thinking about community as a whole for most of her career and has written a number of really great books around community and community building. It's called Turning to One Another. There is no greater than power than a community discovering what it cares about. Ask what is possible, not what's wrong. Keep asking. Notice what you care about. Assume that many others share your dreams. Be brave enough to start a conversation that matters. Talk to people you know. Talk to people you don't know. Talk to people you never talk to. Be intrigued by the differences you hear. Expect to be surprised. Treasure curiosity more than certainty. Acknowledge that everyone is an expert about something. Remember, you don't have to fear people whose story you know. Real listening always brings people together. Trust that meaningful conversations can change your world. Rely on human goodness. Stay together. We already covered the questions piece. So thank you all so very much for the opportunity to talk about this idea of self-direction from a global perspective, but also how we're trying to figure out how to weave that into the work that we're doing here at EUROS. And feel free to reach out to Kristen or I if you have any other further conversations. Cynthia, I almost feel like I read that poem for you, so feel free to reach out and we can continue that conversation. So thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you everyone for attending. This does conclude the workshop on paving the road to a better life, breaking down systems of support. And again, Sheldon and Kristen, we thank you for sharing your time, knowledge, and resources.